Hello and welcome to Football Daily, where today we celebrate the 10 people who were most influential in creating the modern game. 10. George Best. Nowadays, it's perfectly normal for footballers to be global superstars, but back in the 1960s, most players could walk down the street without being recognised. Alfredo Di Stefano and Ferenc Puskás were stocky and rough-looking, whilst Pelé was far away in Brazil, so Georgie Best was something new entirely. When Man United scout Bob Bishop saw Best play as a 15-year-old, he rang Sir Matt Busby and said, "I think I found you a genius." What he had actually found was the first football superstar. Best was a dazzling dribbler who won 2 leagues and the European Cup with the Red Devils, but his pop-star good looks made him marketable and popular with the women as well. Ultimately, his own gifts eventually destroyed him though, as drinking and womanizing took over his life. But he had been the first of a new breed, and without him, there would have been no Beckham, no Ronaldo and no Neymar. The celebrity footballer was born with Best. 9. Herbert Chapman. Manager Herbert Chapman is often credited with spreading the WM formation, which was the dominant team layout in the 20s and the 30s. This saw a centre-half drop deep to sweep up attacks, whilst a forward moved into midfield to make up the numbers. Under Chapman, Arsenal won 2 league titles using the system, adding to the 2 he had already won with Huddersfield. Chapman invented fitness and training regimes way ahead of their time, pressed for the introduction of floodlights and numbered kits, and proposed an idea for the European Cup 20 years before it became a reality. He was keen to bring foreign stars to the English game and signed one of the very first black professionals, Walter Tull, back in 1911. His statue stands proud outside the Emirates Stadium, where Arsenal still play in the red and white kit he first designed. 8. Charlie Goodyear. Before the 1830s, footballs were terrible. Some were made of leather filled with cork, whilst others were used from inflated animal bladders to give them their shape. They constantly deflated, got punctured, bounced erratically and warped in hot or cold weather. Charlie Goodyear invented vulcanized rubber, which was strong and more elastic than normal rubber, and it was used to replace the animal bladders inside footballs. This made them bouncier and rounder, improving control and accuracy for players. Eventually, leather was phased out as it absorbed water, making the ball extremely heavy and causing neck injuries to any player heading it. And today we have feather-light responsive footballs, making for a quicker and more technical game. But it all started with Goodyear. 7. Gusztáv Sebes. Sebes was the coach of the Hungarian national team in the 1950s, as the mighty Magyars became one of the most inventive and feared international sides in the world. With players like Ferenc Puskás and Sándor Kocsis, Hungary won an Olympic gold, reached a World Cup final and inflicted England's heaviest ever defeat in a 7-1 hammering. Sebes put his players on a strict fitness regime and took regular training sessions, treating the national team like a club side. His 2-3-3-2 formation discarded the 3-forward system popular at the time in favour of a false 9, and as centre-backs man-marked in those days, this would draw a defender into the midfield and leave space in behind. That clever move bought Puskás 84 goals in just 85 international games, and Kocsis an insane 75 in 68. In 6 years and just 50 games, Hungary won 42 and drew 7. They only lost the 1954 World Cup final. 5 and 6, Jules Rimet and Rimet Delaunay. International competition has taken football from a European hobby to a global phenomenon. Frenchman Rimet was the 3rd president of FIFA, and along with Delaunay, proposed the creation of a tournament between international teams, or as we know it today, a World Cup. Rimet's diplomacy got the idea approved, and the first World Cup trophy was named after him. Delaunay, however, was disappointed at not receiving more credit for the competition's creation, and so decided to push for a cup limited to European countries. He then became the first Secretary General of UEFA in 1954, but died just 1 year later. Nevertheless, the European Championship held its inaugural tournament in 1960, denying Delaunay the chance to see his idea come to life. However, his name did eventually get the fame it deserved, firstly through his son Pierre, who succeeded him as UEFA chief, and secondly in the name of the championship trophy. 4. Jean-Marc Bosman. An average midfielder, the name of Jean-Marc Bosman would have slid quietly into history if the Belgian hadn't been involved in a landmark legal case on player contracts. Bosman was playing for RFC Liège in 1990 when his contract expired. but the rules at the time meant his registration stayed with the club and he couldn't leave for free. Liège offered him a new contract at a quarter of the salary, whilst putting him on the market for twice his value. Bosman sued the Belgium FA and he claimed that players should be able to move freely if their contracts expired, and that clubs were using the system to prevent footballers joining rival teams by demanding absurd fees. The courts eventually found in favour of Bosman, and players used their new power to negotiate lucrative contracts and transfers. Before too long, agents were running the game, and they still do today. 3. The Cambridge Rules creators. Kicking a ball had been a game since the days of the Romans, but in 1848, students at Cambridge University, England, grew tired of conflicting systems of rules. The boys educated at rugby school wanted to pick up the ball and run with it, whilst no one could agree how to kick off or what happened when the ball went out of play. Even the definition of a goal was a little hazy. The group decided to write down some common laws of the game, and the Cambridge Rules were born. These included restrictions on tackling, no holding, pushing or tripping allowed, and introduced an early version of the offside rule. Players were still allowed to catch the ball but not run with it, making it sort of like netball. These rules were eventually revised, thank God, and laid the foundation for modern day football, a sport that would go on to take over the world. 2. Jimmy Hill. Once a player at Fulham, Jimmy Hill's list of contributions to football is long and impressive. As head of the Professional Footballers Association, he scrapped the cap on players' wages, previously £20 a week, ushering in the wage inflation which has led to Lionel Messi picking up €40 million in 2016. Hill pioneered club branding at Coventry City, introduced a new kit, a club song, a radio station and a mascot in the Midland side, in a move soon copied across the globe. Later, he became a TV presenter, introducing former players as pundits for the first time, and hosted Match of the Day for 15 years. Hill was also instrumental in the change to 3 points for a win in the early 1980s. Previously, 2 points had been awarded for a win and 1 for a draw, but Hill wanted to encourage attacking football. The proposal was passed by just 1 vote in England, but in the mid-1990s had become universal. A remarkable innovator and servant to the sport, Hill sadly died in 2015. 1. Johan Cruyff. You play football with your head, and your legs are there to help you, said Johan Cruyff. And the Dutch legend remains perhaps the only man who was both one of football's greatest ever players and one of its most influential thinkers. Alongside coach Rinus Michels, Cruyff pioneered total football with Ajax and the Netherlands. The Amsterdam club had long made their youngsters play out of position in order to learn more about the game. And the Dutch too used this to create a fluid and unpredictable system, with players interchanging. It took them to a World Cup final and Ajax to 3 European Cups in a row. Always destined to be a coach, Cruyff proposed that Barcelona create an Ajax-style academy whilst he was a player at the club. La Masia was therefore founded, going on to produce the likes of Xavi, Iniesta and Messi, while Cruyff coached the club to a Champions League win in 1992. In the process, he shaped the football philosophy of Pep Guardiola, who built his world-conquering Barcelona side in the 2000s. Talented, intelligent, short-tempered and outspoken, Cruyff was football's greatest visionary. As Guardiola said, Johan Cruyff painted the chapel and Barcelona coaches since merely restore it. For us, Cruyff invented modern football, and everything since is purely a cover version. So there we have it, but what do you guys at home think? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, why don't you click here for loads more great content and down there to subscribe. And as always guys, we'll catch you later.